David, Lindsay, are you there?
Hi, yes, we're here.
Wonderful,
Hi.
wonderful. Hey, how are you guys?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Good.
I'm doing well, hanging in there. Happy Tuesday.
You too.
Um, it's my pleasure to introduce David Nathanson and Lindsay Reynolds. Proxy is a cloud-based visitor management system used by enterprise companies like L'Oreal, PepsiCo, and Audi to transform how people are welcomed in their corporate offices around the world. Best-of-breed integrations make it easy to leverage access control systems, Wi-Fi code provisioning, wayfinding apps, and more. David and Lindsay will demonstrate how Proxyclick can enhance each visitor's experience while securing your premises and your data. David leads Proxyclick's business development on the West Coast and Canada, and Lindsay is based in New York as Proxyclick's enterprise account executive. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce both David and Lindsay of Proxyclick. The digital stage is now yours, everyone.
Thank you, Ashkan, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. Like Ashkan said, Lindsay and I work for the business development team here at Proxyclick. And Proxyclick is a visitor management solution. So first I'll talk a little bit about the company and then why visitor management, and then we'll go into a demo of the product. So a little bit about Proxyclick. We have handled over 20 million visits globally. In the current times, it's vitally important to know exactly who's coming in, who's on site, and so that's what a visitor management system is able to do for your companies. We have over 30 Fortune 500 clients. We are a global company found in over 100 countries worldwide. When you reach out to us, our customer support team is also global, so our average response time is under 5 minutes, no matter what time of day you reach out to us. The solution is available in over 33 languages for visitors to check in. We have about a 99.7% uptime, so very little downtime no matter where you are in the world. We have two sort of solutions. We have a single tenant solution, which is more for single tenant offices, and a multi-tenant solution for big high rises. In our multi-tenant configuration, we cover over 40 million square feet worldwide, and we are found in over 500 lobbies of commercial real estate companies. So a little bit about our customer base. It really doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're accepting visitors at your facilities or offices, you can use a visitor management system. As you can see, we deal with hospitality clients like Airbnb, L'Oreal, software like Intuit, Tableau, Vodafone. We're in the MetLife building. For multi-tenant, we're in the Grace building by Bryant Park in New York City, in Hudson Yards, a lot of buildings in Chicago as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay to talk about why companies come to us for their visitor management needs.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah, we see customers coming to us for a variety of reasons, but one of the most common is their interest and desire in converting their paper process, which might consist of a paper logbook or just pen and paper, to convert that to a digital process. So by doing so and using a system like Proxyclick, you can streamline your visitor process, make it much more efficient, and very importantly, secure that confidential data that is critical to keep safe. So we kind of tackle that digital solution in a three-pronged approach. So we separated it in these three ways. The first would be access to the back end of our system through our web application. So this is totally a web accessible dashboard that allows your employees to enter their guests, pre-register. This is what your employees will work with on the back end. And then we switch to something that we consider more the front end, which is our kiosk or iPad application. That will be what your visitors will actually engage with upon arrival to your premises. And then we also have a light smartphone app that just communicate with reception any changes that need to be made, or maybe you're running late to the meeting, that sort of thing. We also have built an extensive marketplace. So we focus on using an open API to enable the ability to integrate your best of breed ecosystem of applications with Proxyclick. So we do that through meeting room booking, Wi-Fi. It's really important to us that Proxyclick is easy to use with the systems and tools that you already have in place to make the process that much easier. And then this is a great visual of an integrated visitor experience, and important to note that for your multi-tenanted buildings, this can be customized for your tenants. So they're not beholden to one uniform process. And it's just a really good example of how we really like to focus on the visitor themselves. And the flow of this graphic shows kind of how the visit is set up from the back end all the way through integration with maybe your access control system or any of the best of breed apps that you currently use to make it that much easier for the visitor when they do arrive on site. And then of course, very importantly, the focus on security and compliance. So this might be the most important part of Proxyclick for a lot of our customers is just we allow you to really secure that confidential visitor data and export your data so you're able to have that auditability and that digital footprint of being able to drill down on who has entered your premises and when, and really create that audit log. So God forbid, in the case of an emergency or just for any reason, you have that ability to leverage the knowledge about the visitors and contractors that come on site. It protects your premises, your intellectual property, and then of course, very importantly, your people themselves. I'm gonna pass it back to David.
Great. So as Lindsay was talking about security and compliance, obviously in the current environment, this is vitally important. So I'll talk a little bit about both security and compliance and how Proxyclick helps you to achieve both those goals. So when we talk about security, a big reason why we see businesses come to us, there are three challenges that they typically face. First of all, they want to allow access to the right people on site. So you want to make sure that whoever is coming on site, you know who it is, you know that they have not exhibited any flu-like symptoms in the past 2 weeks. They are scheduled to come and see you. They're supposed to have a meeting with someone at your site. You just don't want anybody coming in, and that kind of leads me to challenge number two, is also being able to restrict access to some areas. For example, we work with a lot of data centers where it's crucially important to know exactly who is coming into what part of the building. And so Proxyclick integrates with a lot of different access control systems, and so you can really provision different access to different visitors depending on who they are. And finally, as Lindsay mentioned earlier, we want to keep people safe in case of emergency. So Proxyclick has some built-in tools to be able to notify any visitors in case of an emergency and to make sure that everyone is aware of everything that's going on in the facility. Compliance challenges. So of course, complying with health and safety regulations in the current environment is vitally important. You want to make sure, like I said, that you know who is coming and that they're healthy and they won't put your essential personnel at risk. Also recording visitor data such as health and safety agreements and non-disclosure agreements. In case you're ever audited or you need to comply with HIPAA or ITAR, for example, you want to make sure that you have all those visitor logs. Actually, Governor Cuomo of New York released some guidelines today for the reopening of offices, and one of those mandatory guidelines was to keep a log of everyone who is coming in and out of the building and be able to report that. And so Proxyclick can help you do that as well. And finally, when we talk about building reports about the visitors, maybe you need to know specifically how many visitors was their first time to your office last month, or which visitors were coming in between the hours of 9 and 12 every morning. So Proxyclick can help you see all that data in one convenient space. Now, because of the current coronavirus crisis, we have actually spent the last couple of months building out features directly relating to that crisis, and I'll show you some of those now. So we created a fully contactless, secure, and compliant check-in process. What we mean by that is basically the way that registration is going to work from now on is you want to make sure that you are screening your visitors ahead of time before they even come to the premises. And I'll show you what that looks like during our presentation, but you will send out a questionnaire or a survey to any visitor that was pre-registered and ask them to respond to those questions. For example, have you felt sick in the past 2 weeks? If they answer yes to any of these questions, then the host will be notified that their visitor is not allowed to come on site. However, if they answer no to all the questions that you ask them, they'll receive a QR code and then they'll be able to check in. So you really provide that safety net for all of your employees to make sure that no one sick is coming on site. So this is how the touchless flows will work. Once the person receives their QR code to check in, they'll come to the kiosk. It's available on both iOS, iPads, and Windows Surface tablets. If you have an access control system or a destination dispatch system for your elevators, the visitor can use that QR code as their check-in process, and the host will be notified that the visitor is on site. If you don't have an access control system, the visitor will just walk up to the kiosk, scan the QR code in front of the kiosk. They don't need to touch anything, and that will trigger that notification to the host. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and show you a demonstration of Proxyclick. As Lindsay said, there are two main components to the system. There's the backend component and the front-end component. So first, let's talk about the backend component. On our screen right now, this is what we call the dashboard. And the dashboard is accessible via any web browser. So who has access to this? Reception, security, office managers, anyone who needs to know what's going on in the building at that time. So on the left-hand side here, we see all the data in real time. We have our different statuses. Checked in are visitors who are currently in the office right now. You know exactly what time they checked in, what time they're scheduled to check out. If they take a photo, you can see that here as well, alongside their name, what company they're from, which employee they're visiting with. And then you have other columns that are all customizable up to you. So whatever custom fields you create, whether it's your first time here, what would you like to drink, any sort of custom fields you have, you can input on the dashboard and be able to recognize those data fields at a glance. We also have the checked out status. And of course, these are visitors who came and left, and you have all their information. And then expected to arrive are any of those pre-registered individuals that were input into the system ahead of time by your staff. So first, let's talk about pre-registration. There are a couple of different ways to do that. The first way to pre-register someone is to do it directly from the dashboard by clicking New Visit up on the top right-hand corner here. From here, you can pre-register a single visitor or a group visit. If you do have a large group coming in, you can either input their information one by one, or if you have a spreadsheet of all their information, for example, you can just drag and drop the entire file into this window to pre-register a large group at once. But for now, let's just do a single visitor so you can see the process. Let's say that Patrick Smith is coming in. So we're going to go ahead and create Patrick as a new visitor. Maybe we know what company he's coming from. Maybe we know his email. Let's say Patrick is coming for later today at 4:45 to 5:45. He's coming to see David. And if you click Show More, you have all of your custom fields here that you create yourself. We'll go ahead and create Patrick's visit, and we can see that Patrick Smith has been successfully pre-registered to come in later today to see David. Now, that's one way to pre-register an individual. The other way to pre-register an individual is to do it directly from the employee calendar. So here I have my Outlook calendar. It works exactly the same way from Outlook or from Google Calendar. I'll go in here and let's say I have a meeting a week from today on the 16th. So I'll go into my Outlook calendar and let's use Patrick Smith again. So I don't have to come up with a new fake name. From here, David, the employee, will invite Patrick to the meeting. And here, all David needs to do is add a meeting token, meeting@proxyclick.com. Once that meeting token is inserted into this meeting invite, when the meeting invite is sent out to Patrick, he will automatically be pre-registered into the system. If you do use custom fields, you can also use an Outlook add-in that we've created, which will allow the employee to input all those custom fields directly into Outlook to attach to the visit. So when somebody is pre-registered using one of those two ways, they will receive those emails that we talked about. The first email are the coronavirus questions. So you can customize the text on here, but it'll be some variation of, "Hi Patrick, due to the current pandemic, our visitation policy has been updated. For the health and safety of our staff and other visitors, we require that you answer some questions prior to visiting." they'll go ahead and open these questions. Again, you have full control over what questions your visitors see before they come to the site. So is this your first time here? Yes or no? This has really no bearing about whether they're allowed to check in. This is just for you to know. Let's say it is Patrick's first time here. Now, have you experienced any flu-like symptoms in the past 48 hours? Here is where it determines whether Patrick is allowed to come on site or not. If he answers no, he'll be emailed his QR code to go to check in. However, if he answers yes, it will tell him that you ask him to reconsider the meeting, and also the host who created the visit, David, is alerted as well by an email that looks like this. Hi, David, you scheduled an in-person meeting with Patrick. His answers are not in line with the visitation policy regarding the coronavirus. Please contact your visitor immediately to arrange a remote meeting. However, if Patrick does answer no to that question and is allowed to check in, he will also be emailed details about his visit that he can always reference. It'll have your logo at the top, who he's meeting with, a Google map to click into to follow directions, really helpful if he's never been to the office before, the day and time of the meeting as well. You can also optionally choose to add a photo of the host alongside the host and reception's contact information, and also customize the text on here, letting them know where to park, what else he needs to bring, etc. So that is visitor pre-registration. Now, if we go back to the dashboard, I just want to show a few other features of the dashboard that may be helpful to your staff. We talked earlier about compliance. In case you're being audited or need to export any of the data, you can do so directly from here. All you need to do is click this button, select the date range that you want the export for, click that, and you'll get a downloadable file of the entire dashboard view for whatever date range that you selected. Now, in case of any emergencies, you have a couple of options on the bottom left-hand side here. You can print out the emergency list, which is a list of every visitor who's currently checked in and which employee they're meeting with. And also, if you do ask your visitors to provide their cell phone number, you can contact them all at any time directly from the dashboard, letting them know that there's an emergency and what they should do next. We also have analytics built in on the back end. We spoke earlier about knowing how the flow of your lobby is happening, so you can see per day and per hour for whatever date range that you select, how your visitors are coming in, how many visitors you're getting per month and what method they are checking in, walk-ins versus pre-registered visitors, and also which employees are hosting the most visits. You can also manage deliveries directly through Proxyclick. So anytime a delivery comes in, you can add it to the log, also alert the employee that the delivery is for, that they have a delivery waiting for them, and send a note along as well. We also allow you to print out customizable badges. So as soon as the visitor checks in, you can print out the badge directly for them. So that's the back end. Now I'm going to go ahead and share my iPad screen with you so you can see the visitor process of what happens when they come to check in. Just give me 1 second. All right, great. So here is the kiosk. Now, with the new remote registration features, all the visitor has to do is bring their QR code, hold it up to this front-facing camera on the iPad, and they will automatically be checked in. However, if you do still want to allow for a contact check-in or self-check-in for non-pre-registered visitors, this is what it will look like. You have full control over the background image, what the visitor sees, etc. Like I said, we support over 33 different languages for the visitors and also self-checkout capabilities as well. The visitor will click check-in. They will be asked to identify themselves. So let's say that Randy Jones is coming in. You can ask them more identifying questions. You can make these optional or mandatory. Who are you visiting? So you can integrate your Active Directory with this and allow them to select from a list of hosts. Once they select the host that they're there to see, you can ask them to take a photo. And then the entire check-in flow is up to you, and you can branch out however you want. You can have different check-in flows for different types of visitors, for example. If we click vendor, it asks us to enter our phone number, but if we click that we're a contractor, it asks us if we have completed the screening process. So you can have multiple choice questions on here. You can have fill in the blank questions by hand, like this. Yes or no questions. Screens that just give the visitor information without having them answer anything. You can upload images on here, whether they're safety slides for contractors or floor plans, etc. And finally, if the visitor has not already read and signed the visitor agreement, he can do so directly from the kiosk. The visitor will receive a summary. He'll click check in now. And then the screen will automatically go back to the original welcome screen for the next visitor to check in. So what happens immediately after a check-in? Well, first of all, we can see here on our dashboard that the visitor has checked in. So I think so we see Randy Jones has checked in at 2:51 p.m. for David. We can see that he signed his agreement. We can see that he input his phone number and he's a vendor. The badge will print out automatically. Meanwhile, David, the host, will receive an email that looks like this. Hi, David. Randy Jones has just checked in for you. David, the host, can communicate directly with reception. He can say, I'll be there in 5 minutes, for example. He also gets his visitor's direct contact information, so he can communicate directly with Randy. Other than email, you can also have the host be notified via text message, Slack, Teams, WebEx, Skype, any one of those methods. So even if they're not at their computer, they can still be notified that their visitor has arrived. When it's time for the visitor to leave, again, they can either check themselves out on the iPad or be manually checked out directly on the dashboard. And that is how the system works. Thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing your questions.
David, Lindsay, thank you so much for an amazing presentation. A couple of questions came through, so we'll just take it from the top. How long does it take to implement the system? Basically, how long is it? What's your upload time to get your product up and running?
Lindsay, you can take this one.
Sure. So definitely important to note, and one of the things that really sets us apart is our customer success team. David mentioned a little bit about this in the beginning of the presentation, just in terms of the caliber of customer support that you'll receive when you decide to come to Proxyclick with very short support times. And to directly answer the question, we work with you on your desired timeline. So we really, I mean, David, chime in if I'm wrong, but we've had implementations go up within a week, of course, depending on size, scale, and scope. So we work with you to figure out how we can get to your desired go live date, but it's very quick and easy to implement.
Yeah, and the thing to remember is at the end of the day, it's just an iPad app or a Surface tablet app. So all you need to do is download the app and then sync it with your web dashboard. It could take as little as 5 minutes to actually implement everything, and then maybe a day to customize it to make it look how you want it to look.
Thank you for that. Another question came in regarding asset type. Obviously, David, Lindsay, you guys mentioned office, and in the state of New York, Governor Cuomo mentioning, tracking, obviously within office buildings. But is the technology, can the technology be used for other assets like mixed use, multifamily, industrial, construction projects, and others?
Yeah, that's a great question. To answer you, yes, we are used in construction sites. We've had a few production facilities use us on TV sets for their production crew to check in. We have been used in assistant living facilities for visitors to check in. I'm pretty sure we're also used in a few, I want to say, detention facilities as well. So yeah, it's not just office buildings. Any location that receives visitors can use a visitor management system.
Including education?
Yes, we have a few universities that use us as well.
Wow, that's good. That's awesome. That's good to know. Does the system share data or contact tracing? Any privacy concerns there?
No, I mean, as far as where the information is stored, it's stored on dedicated servers. They're SOC 2 compliant, ISO 27001 compliant, GDPR compliant. We don't share any information with anyone. It's just information that's stored on our servers. Yeah, we keep your information for you to use, but we don't share it with anyone else.
Absolutely, yeah. And another question came in regarding contact tracing. Obviously, David, we just talked about it, Como in the state of New York, what just came out today. But are you finding that other states are encouraging or requiring COVID tracking?
Yeah, I think it depends state by state. I know that a lot of states are recommending something like a visitor log for contact tracing purposes. I know New York is making it mandatory just because I live in New York, and so I'm up to date on the New York requirements. But yes, this can definitely help with contact tracing. You know exactly who scheduled the visit. You know exactly who the visitor was meeting with, from what time to what time they were at the facilities. So it can definitely assist with contact tracing as well.
That's great. Now, talk about the product and the output of it. Does the system give the visitor a virtual name tag or something other, some sort of other confirmation and their approved access?
Yeah, it depends on how you have it set up. So for example, with access control, the visitor receives a unique QR code that allows them to access certain parts of the building depending on how you set up access internally. Or it can print out a customized name badge depending on what type of visitor they are based on how you customize those things yourself on the back end. So it just depends on how the system is configured.
Yeah, and speaking about configurations, can we add other parameters before a visitor gets a response yes or no on the initial questions? So I think what they're asking is, you know, in the iPad presentation, I believe it was the iPad presentation, there was a step one, if you then a step two, but basically it did an A/B split there, depending on what type of response you gave. But if you had a capacity issue, or if there was something other than that, could you modify? Could the questions be modified after?
If I'm understanding correctly, then yes, you can really modify the question flow however you want. The only thing you can't modify is it will ask the visitor to identify themselves before anything else. But after they identify themselves, it doesn't matter what type of visitor it is, or if they're for an event, or they're for an event or just to visit, or in a multi-tenant capacity, for example, which company they're there to see. You'll ask them all that before you go into questions. So you can really, it's a very modular solution, and you can really customize it to flow how you want it to flow, and to alert visitors about specific issues before the check-in is completed as well.
That's awesome. And regarding capacity related issues, so let's say, for hypothetically, to get to this person's question, hypothetically, if the building or the space is at capacity but they are a registered guest, does the system bounce them back or send them some sort of notification that they've reached capacity?
That is a great question. It's not a native integration that was built, but we do have an open API, like Lindsay mentioned earlier. We do work with some companies like Condeco and EMS, for example, that have a lot of that capacity limitation software. And so if you do use one of those, you can integrate it with Proxyclick and make sure that if the building is at capacity, even though somebody is pre-registered, they will not be able to check in.
Mm-hmm. And then another question came in regarding a post-COVID strategy. What features will be available post-COVID-19, like facial recognition, temperature readings, and etc.? Does your platform support any of that stuff?
Yeah, so due to COVID, like I said, we developed some of these touchless check-ins and remote registration, making sure that only personnel that are approved are coming on. Post-COVID, we're working on something called an approval dashboard to make sure that only some companies want only admins to be able to approve anybody who's pre-registered, so not allowing anyone else to pre-register unless those people are approved. As far as temperature check-ins, we do work with some temperature scanning devices that use our API to connect to Proxyclick, and so only individuals that meet a certain temperature threshold or guideline are able to check in as well. Facial recognition is something that we're looking into as well, but that's a little bit farther down the line.
Yeah. And so we have time for one last question, and it's regarding multi-tenant properties. How would the configuration work if you're selling to multi-tenant properties? Would the system need to link to two receptions, one at the building entrance and potentially others in a tenant's office?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. So we, on the dashboard, and I can kind of show it here, you are able to toggle in between the different sort of dashboards. And so the building itself, the lobby, will have their overall dashboard, and then each tenant within that multi-tenant building can have their own specific dashboard. And so the security for the multi-tenant building will be able to see everyone. We also have something called a live time dashboard where security can see everything as it's happening, but then the tenants, they aren't able to see any other tenants' visitors, only their own specific visitors as well. So it is broken down within a multi-tenant setup to make sure that tenants see their information and the building lobby sees their information.
That's absolutely fantastic. Lindsay, David, thank you very much for an amazing presentation, and congratulations on all your success.
Thank you. And, yeah, thank you everyone. And if anyone needs to get in touch with us, our emails are right here. You can get in touch with either myself or Lindsay.